You tell yourself you miss her, that you're addicted to her. But the devastating truth is you're addicted to the familiar pain of wanting someone who will never truly choose you. It's a hunger that has nothing to do with her and everything to do with a void you've carried for years. That emptiness you feel when you put the phone down, that isn't longing for her. That is the sound of you returning to yourself, a place you've been taught to abandon. Introduction: the unspoken anatomy of a hunger. This constant ache, this phantom limb of a person who was never fully there. You call it love, you call it addiction, but it is neither. It is a symptom, a distress signal from a part of you that has been starving for years. This persistent pull towards an unavailable person isn't a measure of your love for them. It is a profound echo of a deep, unmet human need for belonging that has gone unanswered for far too long. You mistake the intensity of the chase for the depth of the connection, because the chaos of uncertainty feels more alive than the crushing silence of your own unresolved emptiness. The heart-pounding anxiety before you send a text, the brief, soaring hope when they finally reply. These moments feel like living at the edge of the world, and you have learned to prefer that cliff edge to the quiet, empty field of your own company. This is not a character flaw. It is not a weakness you should be ashamed of or a mistake you need to correct. It is a tragic, unconscious attempt to heal a much older wound. Your brain, in its desperate search for resolution, has mistaken the brutal chemistry of intermittent hope and despair for the feeling of being truly alive and connected. The adrenaline of the chase, the dopamine of a breadcrumb of attention, the cortisol of the inevitable withdrawal. This chemical cocktail creates a powerful bond, not to the person, but to the cycle of pain itself. It's a familiar rhythm of longing and loss. You are not addicted to her. You are addicted to a story you keep telling yourself. A story where, this time, you might finally be enough to make someone stay. A story where your love, your patience, your relentless effort will finally be the thing that transforms their indifference into devotion, and in doing so, proves that you were worthy all along. The silence they leave behind is never empty. It is a space that fills instantly with the weight of your own doubt. It is filled with every question you were too afraid to ask, every insecurity you were taught to hide, and the echoing pronouncement of your own perceived worthlessness, a judgment that feels both ancient and immediate. This experience isn't just about missing their presence. It is about how their silence activates a primal, terrifying fear of being invisible. When they are not there to validate your existence with a reply, a look, or a passing thought, a cold question rises from the depths of your mind. Do I even exist when I am not being chosen? The quiet moments become a tribunal where you are both the defendant and the prosecutor, presenting irrefutable evidence of your own inadequacy. The stillness of your room becomes an amplifier for an internal noise that is deafening, a relentless static of self-reproach that you mistake for the truth. It is like standing alone in an empty house just after a party has ended. You can still smell the perfume in the air. You see the indentations on the couch cushions where people were laughing an hour ago, but the life has vanished. The silence that follows is so profound it seems to have a physical presence, a heavy blanket that suffocates the air. It doesn't just remind you of what was there. It cruelly illuminates what was never truly yours to begin with. You weren't just a guest. You were the host who secretly hoped that, this time, someone would see the effort, the care, the longing behind your smile, and decide to stay after everyone else had gone home. Their absence is not what haunts you. What haunts you is the reflection of your own profound loneliness you see in the quiet that remains. It's the realization that you were waiting for a sound in a room that was always meant to be silent. You check your phone again. The screen is dark. The silence isn't just an absence of their voice. It is the presence of your deepest fear. You think this agonizing chase is a new torture, a pain unique to this person, to this specific moment in your life. But if you are honest with yourself, truly honest, and you sit with that ache in your chest, you will feel a disturbing familiarity in its rhythm. The emotional chaos of pursuing someone unavailable feels strangely like home because it mirrors the very atmosphere where you first learned the rules of love. It was a place where affection was not a given, but a reward for good behavior, for quiet compliance, for not needing too much. It was a place where you learned that love was something you earned, not something you could simply rest in. This is why the instability they offer feels so recognizable to your nervous system. It's a language your body learned to speak before you ever had the words for it. This is the emotional equivalent of being a small child, running excitedly into a room with a new drawing clutched in your hand. Your face is full of hope. You hold it up to a parent who is always too busy, too distracted by their own worries, or too wounded themselves to truly look up and offer a simple, "I see you." They might give a quick nod, a distracted "that's nice," before their eyes drift back to the television or the phone. And in that moment, you learn one of life's most brutal lessons. Your best effort is only worth a passing glance. You learn that love is not a constant presence, but something you must fight for, something you must perform to receive. So now, as an adult, when you encounter someone who is distant, critical, or emotionally walled off, your soul doesn't register a red flag. It registers a familiar challenge. It sees a second chance to finally get the drawing seen, to finally win the game you unknowingly lost so long ago. You don't see them as unavailable. You see them as the ultimate validation, the one person whose approval could finally quiet that old, familiar ache. In the quiet desperation of the night, when the rest of the world is asleep, you become a strategist. You replay conversations, you dissect sentences, you scrutinize the punctuation in their last message. You convince yourself that there is a key, a hidden combination that will finally unlock their heart. If you could just find the right words for the text, a phrase that is witty but not desperate, vulnerable but not weak. If you could just compose the perfect apology for a crime you never committed, or perform a grand gesture of such unwavering cinematic devotion, they would have no choice but to finally see you, to finally choose you. This obsessive planning isn't truly about them. It is a desperate, heartbreaking attempt to prove to yourself that you are not powerless. It is an attempt to reverse your own long history of being overlooked, to go back in time and correct an old and painful outcome. You believe that if you can change their mind, you can change your own story. You are like a sailor trying to catch the wind in a jar. You feel its presence on your skin, you see its effect on the sails and the sea, and you believe that if you are just fast enough, just clever enough, you can capture it. You can hold it. You can own it. So you run, jar held open, chasing the invisible force, feeling the brief, exhilarating rush as it swirls inside, only for it to slip through your fingers the moment you try to seal it shut. All you are left with is empty hands, exhausted lungs, and the haunting memory of the chase. This obsession with one more try is your refusal to accept the simple, devastating truth. Their heart is not a locked room that you need a key for. It is simply a room that you were never invited into, and your frantic, tireless attempts to break down the door only deepen the wounds of your own self-respect, leaving you bruised and tired on a threshold you were never meant to cross. The belief in a grand gesture is the myth that keeps you fighting a battle that was lost long before you arrived. Their behavior is a masterpiece of unintentional psychological warfare. The small, unpredictable signs of interest you cling to, the late-night text after a week of punishing silence, a brief moment of unexpected warmth in their voice, a cryptic "I miss you" that hangs in the air with no follow-up. These are not proof of their feelings. They are random rewards, strategically intermittent, that create a powerful biochemical addiction inside your very own brain. Your mind, wired over millennia for survival, becomes hooked not on the reward itself, but on the excruciating, tantalizing possibility of a reward. The what-if becomes more intoxicating than any reality ever could be. The moments of their attention are not nourishment. They are a drug, and the withdrawal is the silence you are forced to endure while you wait for the next dose. It is a perfect slot machine addiction. You stand in the dark of your own mind, pulling the lever again and again, feeding the machine your time, your emotional energy, and your self-worth. Most pulls result in nothing but the dull, spinning sound of failure, leaving you emptier than before. But then, Just as you are about to walk away, depleted and resolved to quit, a single cherry aligns. A small, insignificant payout. A tiny crumb of hope. It is just enough to erase the memory of all the losses that came before it. It is just enough to convince you that the jackpot is coming, that your luck is about to turn. The near misses and the tiny, infrequent wins are precisely what keep you standing there, draining your soul for a prize that is statistically, emotionally, and spiritually designed to never, ever hit. You tell yourself you are waiting for them, but you are not. You are waiting for the next hit of hope, the next chemical rush that temporarily silences the profound emptiness of the wait itself. This is why logic fails. You cannot reason your way out of a chemical bond. The most devastating moment in this entire ordeal is not the final goodbye, should one ever come. It's not the unanswered call or the door closed for the last time. It is the moment of crushing, sober clarity when you realize the person you were so fiercely obsessed with doesn't actually exist. You did not fall in love with them. You fell in love with a character you built in the echo chamber of your own mind. A character meticulously constructed from the few, spare crumbs of their attention and massive, heroic amounts of your own hope. You were in a deep, committed relationship with potential. You were addicted to a ghost you dressed in their skin, and the hardest part is admitting that you were the one who designed the costume. You were not just the audience to this play. You were the writer, the director, and the lonely star. It's like rereading old messages late at night, scrolling back for months, maybe years, and suddenly seeing them with new, cold, unforgiving eyes. The words on the screen are the same, but their meaning has been stripped of your hopeful projections. You no longer see hidden affection. You see convenient excuses. You no longer read vulnerability. You read polite indifference. The ambiguity you once interpreted as depth is revealed to be a simple, shallow, and painful lack of interest. In that moment, the grief is twofold, and it hits you with the force of a physical blow. You mourn the loss of the beautiful, imagined future you had mapped out in such vivid detail. And you mourn the person you were who believed in it so fiercely, the person who refused to see the signs, the person who traded their own peace for a fantasy. You were not rejected by them in that moment of clarity. You were simply awakened from a dream you had mistaken for your life. The phantom dissolves, and you are left alone in the room with nothing but the truth. For months, maybe for years, this obsession has served a vital, secret purpose. It was a full-time job, a consuming, dramatic, and emotionally demanding project that successfully distracted you from a much deeper, quieter pain. The sound of your own inner emptiness. As long as you were busy analyzing their behavior, decoding their texts, or planning your next move, you never had to sit in silence and confront the person you were truly running from all along. Yourself. The constant drama was a shield. The chaos was a smoke screen. The entire pursuit was an elaborate and exhausting anesthetic, numbing you to the profound ache of a life that felt unmoored, a self that felt unseen, not just by them, but by you. Imagine a detective who has spent his entire career obsessed with solving a single, unsolvable case. It defines him. It is the first thing he thinks about in the morning and the last thing he revisits at night. It gives his life a fierce, sharpened purpose. It is the reason he gets out of bed. Then one day, the case is finally anticlimactically solved. There is no grand celebration, only a vast, terrifying silence in his office and the echoing question, "What do I do now?" His entire identity was tied to the architecture of the investigation. When the chase ends, either because they leave for good or you finally collapse from exhaustion, you are left alone in that quiet office. You are forced to face the loneliness, the lack of purpose, or the old, unhealed wounds that made the noise of the chase so necessary in the first place. The obsession was never about them. It was about having a reason not to look at the empty chair across from you, the one you were meant to occupy in your own life. You tell yourself the story of their abandonment. It is a clean, simple narrative. You were the one who cared, and they were the one who left. You focus on the moment they walked away, the message they didn't send, the choice they ultimately didn't make. But the great, tragic betrayal in this story was not committed by them. It was committed by you, against you in 1,000 small ways every single day. In your relentless, desperate pursuit of their validation, you systematically abandoned yourself. You silenced your own intuition when it whispered, "This is hurting you." You ignored your own needs for consistency, for clarity, for a simple and honest respect. You made yourself small, agreeable, and endlessly available, hoping that your compliance would one day be mistaken for worth. You treated your own well-being as a currency to be spent in exchange for a moment of their attention. The deepest wound was not inflicted by their final rejection. It was carved out, slowly and deliberately, by your own self-betrayal. It's like being the captain of a ship, so mesmerized by a beautiful but distant mirage on the horizon that you begin throwing your own precious cargo overboard to lighten the load and get there faster. First, you toss out your boundaries, convincing yourself they are unnecessary weight. Then go your own needs, dismissed as selfish. Then your peace of mind, sacrificed for the thrill of the chase. You even throw over the voices of friends who stand on the deck and try to warn you that you are heading towards an illusion. You toss it all away, convinced the destination will be worth the cost. But when the mirage inevitably vanishes into the heat haze, you are left stranded, adrift, on a ship you have stripped bare with your own 2 hands. They didn't sink your vessel. You handed them the map and willingly emptied it yourself, hoping they would find you valuable enough to rescue. Here is the truth you must eventually face if you are to ever find peace. This person was never the answer. They were the catalyst. Their specific brand of emotional unavailability, their unique way of offering just enough to keep you hooked but never enough to make you feel safe, was perfectly shaped to fit into the oldest wound you carry. It was a key, cut precisely to unlock a room inside you that has been sealed for years. The room that holds the original belief that you must earn love. The part of you that is convinced that you are fundamentally unworthy of being chosen freely and without relentless effort. They didn't create this wound with their rejection. Their presence in your life simply illuminated it with an unbearable brightness. They made the invisible injury visible. She was like a fluorescent dye poured into a slow-moving, murky river. That river has always been you. It has always had its hidden currents, its deep, unseen channels, and its dangerous undertows that have pulled you in certain directions your whole life. But from the surface, it was impossible to see the structure of it all. You just knew you felt a constant, inexplicable pull you couldn't understand. Then she came along, and the dye of her presence was poured into your water. It didn't change the river's course. It didn't create the currents. But it suddenly made everything starkly, painfully visible. For the first time, you could see the shape of your own emotional patterns. You could see the deep channel of abandonment fear, the treacherous current of your need for validation. She wasn't the destination you failed to reach. She was the map that showed you, in excruciating detail, exactly where your deepest pain resides. The entire journey was never about getting to her. It was about finally being given the map that leads back to the source of the river itself. The agony you feel right now, the obsessive thoughts that circle in your head, the physical ache in your chest, the profound and hollow sense of loss, is not a punishment. It is not a life sentence, and it is not a sign that you are broken beyond repair. It is a biological and emotional signal, as vital and as natural as the pain of touching a hot stove. It is a desperate, primal message from a neglected part of your soul. It is a message that has been trying to get your attention for a very long time, through many other people and many other situations. This time, it has simply become too loud to ignore. This pain is asking you, it is begging you, to finally stop looking for a home in the empty rooms of other people's hearts and turn inward to build one for yourself, a place from which you can never be evicted. The pain is like a small, persistent child, pulling at the sleeve of your coat while you try to walk away. For years, you've tried to ignore it. You have shushed it, gotten annoyed by it, pushed it away, or tried to distract it by pointing at something shiny and beautiful in the distance, like the hope of someone else's love. But the child will not stop. It will not be silent, because it has something vital to tell you, a truth about your own thirst, your own hunger. Healing does not begin when you finally numb the pain or forget their name. It begins when you finally have the courage to stop walking, to turn around, to crouch down to its level, and look that crying child in the eyes. It begins when you ask, with genuine and open curiosity, "What is it that you need?" The agony is not your enemy. It is the purest, most honest part of you, speaking its truth at last. It is not a life sentence. It is an invitation. The journey out of this addiction, this haunting, is not about learning to hate her or forcing yourself to forget the pain. It is not an act of erasure. It is about having the monumental courage to finally stand still, to stop running towards another person and to stop running from yourself. It is about learning to sit with the profound discomfort of their absence and, in that deafening silence, finally offer yourself the unwavering acceptance and validation you were so desperate to receive from someone else. The path forward begins with the slow, deliberate, and often painful process of turning your attention away from their phone and towards your own soul. The hunger that drove you to them was real, but you have been standing in front of an empty restaurant, begging for food, while ignoring the nourishment you have always carried within you. This pattern of attraction to the unavailable is not your destiny. It is your history calling for your attention. It is a ghost from your own past, rattling its chains in the hallways of your heart, asking not to be exorcised, but to be seen and understood. The path to healing, true healing, begins with a quiet, devastating, and ultimately liberating realization. The love you were chasing was a phantom, but the hunger you felt was real. And after all this time, after all this pain, it is finally time to learn how to feed yourself. The pain was never the problem. It was the guide. The other person was never the destination. They were simply the one who held up the map. And now you stand at a new beginning, not with a wound that defines you, but with a map that can finally lead you home to yourself. If this silence feels familiar, if this ache feels like home, it is not because you are broken. It is because your wounds are trying to speak. Understanding their language is the first step. But the translation, that happens elsewhere. We have written a short guide about these invisible patterns. It's not about healing in 5 easy steps. It's about finally giving your pain a name so you can stop being haunted by a ghost you can't see. The link is in the description. It is free and it is honest.